Well, happy Monday morning, everyone here. Holiday weekend, whether you're in Canada or in the US here, getting ready for, we have a big CFL game tonight here, Monday Night Football with the Argonauts taking on BC Lions, America's CFL team. But we are here today talking USFL. No days off here, no weeks off. I think officially safe to say the highest viewed USFL Championship Game pregame show. It's kind of like the election cycle. You kind of got to wait for all the numbers to come in, but it looks like maintain that. Most watched USFL kickoff show, most watched USFL Championship Game show. So, people, if you're with the league, if you're with, we're around here. We're kind of doing our thing, but we're always here. A couple guests today. You want to talk about the the hard work of this. Live from a rest stop, unable to make it home, but could not be on the show today. We have Pat Rufino. First off, Pat, how are you doing? As his phone immediately drops out. Okay, we'll get Pat on here. Pat was working over the weekend, but I have here a special guest standing by. Is that the Professor's Music? Andy Murray, how are you doing, sir?
It is I. I am coming off the top rope. It's been a while, hasn't it?
It's been a while. I think we might do something this week too. I'm workshopping ideas here, but Andy live. He was in Anime Con, right, in LA here on vacation, and he wanted to come on talk the championship game. How are you doing, sir?
Yeah, I've just been away for about a weekend with my friend at a little convention here in Los Angeles. The weather's been great, but I guess I wanted to get off my sabbatical for a moment to come and talk about this because I know I'm a little bit out of my element. I don't have my normal attire, but I wanted to come and talk about this since we've already gotten to the end of the season already. It just flew by. I don't know about you, but it felt like this USFL season went by much faster than the last one, and even faster than maybe the XFL season. Maybe I'm just imagining that. But to me, I couldn't believe. I felt like I was just watching your preview show with Rick Sartella and everybody. It almost feels like 2 weeks, not 2.5 months or 3 months.
It's weird, and I'll bring Pat in here. I think Pat's just having connection issues. We'll get him on, but it's been hard, right? And I think this is what everyone wanted, right? We've talked about this for years, and the dream, and year-round football, and I mean, this is 1% of the challenges the players go through, and the coaches and the staff and the workers and everyone else. But it's a lot, and I think that the overhang with the XFL kind of helped make that USFL season feel shorter also, right? It took really till week 4 or 5 to kind of like, okay, now we're just doing this on our own. We don't have to, we're not, Pat, like you're on or Pat, we're kind of trying to juggle all these multiple leagues and all of that. I don't know. And I also, to me, and this is just, maybe my Twitters and stuff, USFL still feels like it exists a little bit more in a vacuum. I still feel like I see more XFL. And again, that could just be because I'm following the Matt Berries of the world. And thankfully, a lot of the XFL people kind of survived the cuts with ESPN last week. I know that Jason Fitz wasn't so lucky, but I don't know. For whatever reason, it kind of felt like we were midseason with the USFL. And honestly, if you miss the games, if you blink and you miss, they're kind of gone. I know Pat does a really great job. Obviously we talk the games every week, but like you kind of, if you miss it over the weekend, I feel like it doesn't exist here following coming into Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, if that makes sense. Yeah, Andy, you're muted.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, both of them are kind of like, it seems like you could accept one of them into your lives and then displace the other, right? And I suppose it's the same way with the CFL too. Now, we here, obviously, at the Markcast don't discriminate. We get ourselves involved in all of them. So for me and you and all of us, most of us, I think it's not really that different because it all overlaps together and it's all sort of this part of this just giant amalgamated calendar. But for most people, yeah, I mean, it can just be over in a flash and that's it. That's their season. And that's all they were looking forward to. So for me, it's just been really interesting to see now with all these colliding calendars together, just sort of this continuous flow of gridiron action. I mean, it's just so funny seeing all these NFL reports and camps coming out and being like, oh, well, training camp starts. We'll be without football for so-and-so days. And it's like, we've been living this for how many months now? I mean, since February on, and it's not really gone away, and it's not going to go away for the CFL. Obviously, it's going to be here until, November. So for us, I mean, our off periods don't really exist. Like as far as if you are exclusively a football watcher, if you indulge in all leagues, there is no time off now. If this is going to be a continuing trend, but as far as an alt leaguer goes, I mean, still there are people who have their alliances and sort of choose which one they decide to put their and time them and money and investments in. Obviously, so it's interesting just seeing how kind of people measure out their schedules in that way. But for me, I mean, it's just been the train's just been rolling the entire time.
There we go. I was trying to add the banner back on, and ended up deleting the banner, and now we have the banner going again here. Let's bring Pat in as well here. Pat, like I said, no days off. Pat's literally live from the truck stop here. I couldn't make it home with his work schedule. Pat, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. Apologies for the connection issues. I'm somewhat dirty right now, so not really.
No issue. No issues at all. We appreciate it. Pat, what have you made of this? We've done it. We've been here every week. No weeks off here. What do you make? We finally, we've crowned a champion. Stallions back to back. What do you make of all this?
As far as with the season, I think it was a good season. A lot of games. I think we've talked about it with a little bit of football fatigue. And honestly, like as people who cover these leagues, we just kind of have to I want to sound too simple here, but man up and do it. Like there are days I don't really want to watch 4 football games back to back to back because, I'd like to go outside or even better, take a nap. But I mean, this is the commitment that we've made to these players, to these leagues. And I'm glad that they completed a second season with the intention of coming back for a third. That's 3 years of opportunities for guys,
In terms of the game itself, and we'll get Andy, I celebrated the Mariners decided to go somehow get 2 miraculous wins here against the Tampa Bay Rays after losing 15-4 on Friday. Imagine, Andy, imagine my life. I'm sitting there. I'm like, I got really good seats to these next 2 games here. The Mariners just gave up 15 unanswered runs. Won both games, celebrated, and then I went back. I watched every snap of the USFL Championship game last night. Don't at me on that. So we'll go first, Pat, and then Andy. Pat, the game itself, I thought it was not nearly as exciting as last year. I don't want to be too critical. What did you make of the game?
I mean, when you start off last year the way like that Stars game, and then you add the parity of like the injuries, like you set the bar really high. You know what I mean? Like regardless of the 4 and 6 teams, like we saw a good 4 and 6 team a couple weeks back, but with how good last year's game was, a lot of things had to align. But I mean, I think it went pretty level to the season that we saw from both these teams. Alex Magoo made a lot of plays. He scrambled a lot. Through some, he did what Ben DiNucci thinks Ben DiNucci can do with way less interceptions. And then, the Maulers relied on defense, Troy Williams running and Chris Blewett's leg. And we saw throughout the season they had a lot of issues finishing. And how many times did they get inside the 20? I think 2 or 3, and they couldn't score. So I mean, if you were it fell in line with the script to keep it a lack of a better term. And they made it competitive because I think it was 3-0 going into like the middle of the second quarter. And the Maulers were winning, and that touchdown that Isaac Sacapolo, when he handed off the ball forward, that kind of changed the game a lot. Like, granted, I don't think he was going to score, but he would have probably been within the 25. But I mean, no real surprise. I'm sure there was a lot of people who thought the Maulers were going to win, but I mean, I wasn't surprised by this outcome. I think I said they were going to win like 14-27 or something like that. The Stallions.
Pretty close in there. Yeah, I have some notes as well. Andy, what did you make of this?
I mean, it was the Alex Magoo show, and it has been the entire season. He was outstanding for the most part in the entire playoff run. You have an accounted for 9 total touchdowns in 2 playoff games. That's saying something. He just was putting his improvisational skills on display constantly throughout the entire run. Now, it almost got him into trouble during the game. He almost had that just hideous fumble against the Maulers, and where Boogie Roberts had the handoff, and it almost led up to a score. And honestly, for Boogie, you got to know you got to lateral that ball, man. You can't just hand that off. That's like football 101. You can't hand that off forward, man. And if you had scored there, that shifts the momentum completely for the Maulers. Instead, you're holding them into a field goal, and you don't really get a chance to get that momentum back. So for the Stallions, I mean, Magoo just was outstanding this entire season. He really stepped up. He was a different quarterback. Last year, I honestly was saying during not the championship game, the inaugural game that we went to, I was like, I don't want this guy playing. Yeah, I don't think he can throw. And I wanted Jamar Smith out there. And Jamar Smith was the right quarterback to go with the entire season. This season, we'll never know because Jamar Smith got hurt, but clearly Magoo got to go through leaps and bounds of development and with the staff and with this offense, which again did not have its full arsenal. I mean, there was no Bo Scarborough, and there was no who I'm trying to remember the other receiver, Marlon Williams. There was no Marlon Williams. There was no full arsenal for him to deal with, and that was kind of the thing I thought about during the championship game, especially in the second half, was, man, it would be really nice if they had a running back to really grind out the clock here and kind of eat up time. And CJ Marable is good. I like CJ Marable, but Bo Scarborough would have been perfect for that situation. So kudos to Scarborough for just being, or sorry, for Magoo for being on top of his game, being able to hit his spots, just being able to improvise, running out of the pocket. He was outstanding the entire game. So I can't say that the Maulers really had an answer the entire time.
I don't, I want to get Pat's thoughts on this because I know Pat's obviously high on Magoo and he gets the MVP and he's getting, going to get the game MVP and all this kind of stuff. To me, it felt, and it might be if this is my quarterback, maybe I feel different, right? Like where I am not a Stallions fan, so I'm like, I'm jealous of this guy, or he's got these big flowing locks and he's kind of running around, but it felt like he was getting a little like high on his own supply at the end, like during this game, like scrambling when he didn't even need to. Like he's like out running around, and then you're like, okay, you didn't even need to kind of like. It felt like he was trying to do a lot. I know there was one where Skip called like the timeout. Alex was like, no, I was able to. I was gonna be able to get it off. Like I knew what I was doing. And then they came out and ran right into a wall. And it's like, well, maybe you should have listened to Skip. Like maybe, I don't know. I felt like he's obviously still learning. I don't know where he goes from here. They pointed out, right, obviously the 4 touchdowns, championship game record, beat it over, Case Cookis last year. What did you make of Magoo here, Pat, in that, and just in terms of like him feeling like he was trying to do too much? And I don't know if that was necessary. I don't know. It felt like he kind of got to a weird spot.
I think it comes down to film, and not just for Magoo, but for all these guys. When you have the luxury of like these alt football leagues, we saw it, is like every game means so much to these guys, that every game is going to be another one of these guys, putting their best foot forward, giving their best effort, especially when you like, when this isn't your end goal. Like I'm sure there's some players who are just doing this like, because they love playing football and they got other businesses. In fact, I know a couple of these players have things going on, but for Alex, like every snap is, I need to show what I can do so I can get back to the NFL. It doesn't, at this point, like for me, like what does Alex have to prove in the USFL? Like last year he was the starter, but he put together some pretty good highlights last year. Obviously Smith played better, but then he came back in the championship. He, he led the team back to a victory. And this year he puts together probably one of the best, if not the best season in alt football history of I think he had 25 total touchdowns, 5th or 6th in the league in rushing. Like Andy said, this playoff run, you accounted for 9 touchdowns in 2 games. Like that's uber impressive. And then they go back to back. I mean, at this point, Alex has most likely one goal, and that's to get back to the NFL. And I mean, every snap for him is, in probably his mind, crucial. Like every snap is a highlight reel, or attempting to be put on a highlight reel would be a better verbiage for it.
But it's tough because we're seeing that. We saw that with the XFL as well, where how do you balance that, right? How do you go out there where we saw like AJ McCarron felt to be more calm during the season? Just, okay, this is where I'm at right now. I'm accepted that, where you got that with Ben DiNucci. Like you said, every single play, like, I got to go out here. I got to win every single game on my back. And it just, you end up getting different performances. And I don't know if you got like the Scooby Wrights last year, and where he's like, I don't even know if I want to do this football thing anymore. Like, you feel a little bit more free, where you get, it just feels like a lot heavier weight on some of these guys. Andy, does that make any sense?
No, it does. And that's the thing. You have to set your own expectations and goals going into these leagues. You can't just be aloof. You need to know, okay, am I going into the league, or do I want to stay here and be comfortable? And I guess for some players, maybe that is trying to rekindle their love of the game, and maybe trying to find out if they really want to be there. Like, again, I go back, I've used him as an example again, but like TJ Barnes, the defensive tackle for the Arlington Renegades, was pretty sure he was not going to play again. And then they gave him a call. He comes back, he plays really well, he wins a championship ring, and now he's like, all right, I'm good. I don't need to do that anymore. Sometimes just having that answer for a player really kind of gives them some sort of closure and solitude, so that they don't have to continue asking that question the rest of their lives. Because a lot of players don't get that chance. They just say, well, I guess I'm not sure. I could have done this. I could have. Every player doesn't really want to become like Uncle Rico, like, I could throw one ball over the mountains, and you don't really want to have that for every player. I think, I'm not saying every player does, but I'm sure there's some sort of mental gymnastics you have to work through. So, and it's interesting you bring up Scooby Wright. I do wonder, maybe was this his last rodeo, because now he's won back-to-back championships. He's been on a great team. Will it ever get this good again? Will it ever be better than this? I mean, as a Stallions fan, you are spoiled. You've lost 3 games in 2 years as a football team at any level. I don't care what level it is. That's impressive. That's hard to do. And for players that are on that team, or the staff that are on that team, you have to think about, like, is this my chance to jump? Is this my chance to go on to something else? Because that is some excellent resume work. But at some point, the train does have to stop, unless, other USFL teams did improve this year. I mean, the North was a mess, but Michigan technically did improve. The Maulers did improve. The South, I mean, I thought the Breakers were formidable. They just didn't have anything go their way, and they got absolutely shellacked in the South Division Championship game. But I mean, Houston improved. Memphis was better. There will be teams that will make moves, and these teams are always shifting their rosters. The coaches are changing. Somebody's going to step up next year. So for Birmingham, I guess for the players and the coaches, you have to ask yourself, all right, is this the end goal, or is there something greater? But I don't think, I wouldn't try to go into it thinking like, well, I'll hang around in their offseason and we'll think we'll just be shooting on all cylinders again next year. I mean, I don't think that's the case.
Yeah, we talked with John Vogel kind of on our championship game pregame show. Like, I don't know. To me, the year 2 to 3 jump is going to be interesting. For if you're on a crappy team, if maybe you're on the fence and you don't know if you want to go back, or if you're coaches, you're not sure. Some comments here, and then I got a couple notes. Denzel checking in. What's up, guys? Maulers had bad game plan. Talking the Maulers offensive line as well. Jacob sent me an email. Jacob's cataloged every XFL and USFL TV rating here coming up. I think we'll do something with this week. Stallions had only 6 drives, and the Maulers didn't do anything when they had the ball. Made it kind of boring. Mike checking in. Game was let down, especially when one team can't even score a TD and thought they could beat the Stallions kicking field goals. That's kind of my question here. And we have some things like Magoo or PJ Walker. Maybe we can get to at the end. But the biggest story to me was this like kind of Ray Horton meltdown with the referees kind of going into the halftime and then into the second half. I know there was like the movement on the end zone, the TD one that the Stallions that Ray was yelling at. I thought they had a time clock violation as well. I know there's always that weird, like, well, it's got to hit 0, and then the ref looks. But then Ray Horton like really kind of had this meltdown going in where they had the pump formation and there wasn't enough guys. And then even the broadcasters were noting, like, it seems like he's overwhelmed with this in the second half and not really even paying attention to the game. Pat, what did you make of kind of the downfall here of the Pittsburgh head coach?
I mean, I wouldn't call it a downfall. He is a first-time head coach, so like dealing with that, it's a different beast when you're the guy. Like when you're at your position coach, it's kind of easier to be like, just focus on us. But when you have that mantra as the head coach, focusing on us is all 22 guys and guys on the field and whatnot. I mean, I understand that because, when I was rewatching the game, I was kind of confused myself, and usually I keep the games on silent. So I had to like go back and kind of speed it all up. I mean, I hope that's a growing pain. I would like to believe he handled it probably way better than Kirby Wilson would have, personally. But in the end, I mean, we could talk about formations and we could talk about questionable calls and stuff like that. But, I mean, you still got to put the ball in the end zone. And that was like the biggest bugaboo.
Andy, what do you make of this? I think Pat's like I said, connection issues here.
Yeah, I think the offensive game plan was just not good enough for the Maulers. They obviously, I know they haven't had a lot going for them as far as like that go-to guy. I think it was interesting talking about one of the people on your show, the preview show, was talking about Bailey Gaither and how his snap percentage was really low and he wasn't being utilized at all, despite him being a viable weapon last year. I don't really get some of the offensive distribution for some of their playmakers. Troy Williams is trying his damnedest. I mean, he's running for his life out there, and he had a couple of really good scrambles. But I just think that the game plan of saying, well, we'll chip away here and there by kicking field goals, that's not going to work. You just saw this team put up 40 plus points in the South Championship game. You think they're going to just be able to hold in the field goals the entire game? You're out of your mind. I don't really like that they settled so much, and to try and trust your kicker to make all of his field goals. I mean, he missed one in the second half that would have put him up to 15 points, and instead, they're sitting at 12 still. It's just at some point you just got to put your foot on the gas pedal and just say, look, we got to go for it, and we need to start doing something because this is not going to be sustainable. For Ray Horton, I mean, I think his job this year was to calm the locker room after last year's just complete debacle with Kirby Wilson, and he did that. I think. I'm not sure if it is his personal goal, but I think he accomplished that goal in that he was able to stabilize everything after just the chaos that they went through last year. So in that regard, he did. But yeah, in terms of his management, his clock management, in terms of his ability to kind of game manage in the second half, he got schooled by Skip Holtz. Holtz has been there, done that. And Holtz, to me, I mean, he's kind of the class of the league at this point. I mean, he's really shown himself to just be able to push all the right buttons. He's dealt with injuries. He's dealt with egos. He's dealt with, extenuating circumstances in different games. They haven't been invincible themselves, but they always seem to have the right answer to these problems that arise in these games. Last year's championship game, Jamar Smith gets hurt, bring in Magoo. You're dealing with all these random, quarterbacks from the Stars. Okay, now you have to keep adjusting to them. And this year, I mean, he's playing against an outstanding defense. And that's honestly, like I said, Magoo just did his magic again. He played against an outstanding defensive unit. That's the thing that's kind of shouldn't be lost on people. Like, the Maulers defense is legit, man. Like, that was not an easy performance. So for the Maulers, it is disappointing, but I think it's just more of their offensive scripting and then just not really being able to be aggressive enough. I think they went in with the wrong game plan, in my opinion.
Yeah, I just don't get a couple of things. I don't get. Yeah, you're going in against the Stallions. Like, we see this a lot in the NFL as well. Whoever is playing the Chiefs and we're just gonna kind of get some field goals here. It's like you're never gonna beat when Magoo's throwing 4 touchdowns. You're never gonna, and I hate the trading field goals for touchdowns or whatever, but very true. I wonder a world that exists where Skip Holtz isn't with Birmingham and the USFL, right? And I don't know if it's Skip is the greatest coach in the world, or they just assembled the best team, or the headquarters and he's got more of a cushy gig there and it's their home thing. And I don't know all of that, but it's really worked out well, because I do think as kind of tiresome as it is to have this dynasty of what RJ Young call it here with 2 seasons, but you need to have some, factor kind of carry over there. Let's bring Pat back in here. Pat was talking about kind of the offense and Ray Horton and being able to being unable to capitalize. Oh, Andy, go for it. Oh, there we go. Pat, are you there? No. All right. Andy, thoughts on Skip and Birmingham? I don't know. Pat's having connection issues.
Pat's getting wooed by the rest stop amenities. He might, he's like thinking about all the great things in the store. But no, well, I would ask RJ Young. I'd say, well, tell you what, you go ask the Winnipeg Blue Bombers fans if you think they're in the middle of a dynasty, or CFL fans if you think the Winnipeg Blue Bombers are in a dynasty. Because all I heard about before the Grey Cup last year was, oh, the 3-peat could happen, and this will be the dynasty, not the repeat, the three-peat that they were about to embark on. That would be considered the actual start of the dynasty. Back to, in my estimation, in any time that I've watched football in any way, shape, or form, or any sport, back-to-back does not mean dynasty. And so I don't really understand where that terminology is coming from for just back-to-back champions. If they win 3 in a row, great, awesome. Okay, I get it. But it has to be multiple years of winning championships and not just 2 in order to consider yourself a dynasty. I mean, that's back-to-back is special. Don't get me wrong. Like, that's amazing. That's a great accomplishment. That's very difficult to do in any sport for any reason whatsoever. But you have to be able to accumulate. Like, okay, look at the Chiefs. I mean, the Chiefs, I think, are not considered to be in a dynasty right now. They've been to 3 Super Bowls and they've won 2. Now, they've been to a bunch of AFC Championship games, but I haven't heard anyone toss around the word dynasty yet until they win 3. That's the golden rule. So I find RJ's terminology to be humorous, considering that I've never heard that for any other sport at any point.
Yeah, a couple other notes here about the game, and then I have some more like the actual championship kind of whatever. We talked about that fumble recovery of the long, handing the ball off forward. Because again, you're like, Pittsburgh cannot score. They cannot score a touchdown. So you're like, oh my God, okay, let's defense scoring. And then obviously it was called back to like the 25, or I think it was like the 30. Okay, then they don't score again here. Like then we still kick a field goal, that kind of thing. It feel like they kept talking, giving Jaron a lot of praise kind of for being aggressive here on like 3rd and long and really sending a lot of pressure. It felt like Magoo, like I said, kind of at the top, a little bit like playing with kids' toys out here. And so I like to see him struggle a little bit. I don't like anyone where it's like, it felt like he was kind of a level above a lot of the players just in terms of seeing the game or kind of existing last night. We had the miss. Oh yeah. Then Gaither had the big drop with like 7.5 minutes left, a big miss on that where he wasn't looking. I really felt like it was over at that point. And they knelt down and it was going 2.5 and they got the first down. And then you're like, this went to battle. Were you surprised? Like Jack at one point was like, well, now remember, in the USFL, we can still go for 1, 2, or 3 points. And like, this is still kind of, I'm like, I haven't seen more than 3 teams go for 2 points the entire season. Like, but it felt like the game wasn't a game after about 8 minutes left.
I mean, I'm glad that Jack keeps bringing up the rules because I think it's easy to forget about because nobody does them. Nobody goes for those conversion points because they don't have to. You see, like, I think that's what's so, in my opinion, so intriguing about the XFL rules because you can actually be forced into doing it. You force the teams to go for a 1, 2, or 3 point conversion, and then you start playing with analytics. If you're giving teams the choice to just kick a PAT, they're going to do it every single time. And you're not really changing the game at that point. You're just giving people the same tried and true traditions, and you're not going to really do anything different. So, yeah, I think that's funny that, like, with are there Maulers really a team that would go for 2 or 3 willingly? Like, is that really the team? Even in Birmingham doesn't do it. And they score all the time, and they say, no, they're going to take the action. We're going to take the point. That's it. Every team is going to do the same thing. I find it extra hilarious because, listen, I like the place kickers this year were much better than last year. Like the place kicking across the board was just a million times better. There was no controversy with, chips in the football or trotting punters out there trying to kick a field goal. Jeff Fisher, and there's no any of that going on. It was much better across the board. Still, there were a fair number of PATs that were missed from teams. So it's still funny to me that that's the default option, even though they're playing from as far back as they would be in the NFL, which means you're going to have some missed PATs. And so I wish there was more incentive for these teams to go for 2 and 3. They're not going to do it unless they're absolutely forced to. So I do find that interesting. But yeah, other point that you brought up about Bailey Gaither dropping that pass, is that not eerily reminiscent to Chris Blair dropping that pass for the DC Defenders in the championship game for XFL? Same, and it had that same feeling of like, oh, this is over. Like as soon as he dropped it, the air got sucked out of the building, and that was it. It's remarkable how similar that was.
Well, and it was like Gaither wasn't even expecting it. Like he barely, there's like, well, he didn't even see it. It kind of looked like he saw it, turned over his shoulder there at the end, but it was kind of weird. The thing with these 2 and 3 point conversions, like you said, where if you don't give them the default of kicking with it, is, like you look at the Maulers, we can barely score touchdowns, right? So we, to go for that, it was like the Elks here this last week when they were playing. I think it was the Red Blacks game on Thursday. But it doesn't feel like it was that long ago where they finally got a TD, and then Chris Jones is like, "We're going for 2." I'm like, you guys scored like 3 touchdowns the entire season. Like, we're really going for the 2-point convert here. Like, I would take the points and move on. But again, you're rewarding. It's not being lazy, but you're rewarding like, okay, you're going to kick it. The idea with the XFL, and you're going for it, whether it's 1, 2, or 3, is you're still going for that play, right?
Yeah, it has to be a mentality thing. I mean, I go back to when I was in college and I'd watch Chip Kelly and his offense operate with Oregon. The gimmick with Oregon was that they'd always score a touchdown, then they'd go for 2 on the first touchdown. And more often than not, they would get it on we call it the swinging gate. So it'd be like kind of like a quarterback RPO, or like a punter doing a sort of run sweep option, and they would go up 8-0, and it was kind of sending a message to the other team like, you better score touchdowns today and keep up with us, otherwise we're going to run away with this game. And they more often than not would score 40 50 points and go on to dominate. So it's almost like a mentality thing that they do it from that standpoint. I mean, for a team like Seattle, right, the Seattle Sea Dragons, I mean, June Jones is a madman and just says, I want to go for 3 because that's what analytics says, and he probably thinks he can get 3 every single time. Again, it's your mantra, it's your mentality as an offensive play caller. With USFL teams, they don't think that way. That's not their gig. They're, for lack of a better term, more conservative when it comes to that approach, and they just want to be able to get any sort of points whatsoever. But there's no that level of aggression is not something that I think permeates in any of the teams. The only thing that it might work with is maybe the Stars. The Stars are the only team I would think that would try and take the advantage of that with Bart Andrews' offense and the air raid. But other than that, I don't see that being the case for a lot of these teams.
Yeah, and Gene Jones, running into trouble over the weekend. So I don't know. I know the report had come out that he had been on some Hawaiian radio saying that he was angling for the XFL Las Vegas Vipers head coaching job, and then obviously getting suspected DUI arrest and posting bail Friday night. So we'll see. I don't know what that means for Gene Jones. I know that, when you're a position like, a year in sports here is one of the head coaching positions. I don't know how leagues look at that. We'll kind of see how the XFL wants to handle that. But yeah, June might be out. The thing, like with June going for 3 was, I'm sure the analytics are telling him go for 3, but like your team is not good enough to go. Like, this is like an XFL team. No offense. Like this isn't, we're not running, Mahomes and Kelsey out there. Like we're running DiNucci and, whatever. Couple of other things, and then we have some questions. We have a lot of stuff to get to. 6 sacks by Birmingham. I thought that was great. Good to see Willie Yarberry with the Stallions kind of get the game-sealing fumble recovery there. I tracked Willie all the way back. I was with the Generals back in the spring league, and I remember, I think it was the first game we're sitting there watching the San Antonio, and I'm like, he had a crazy. I can't remember if it was like a block. I think it was like a blocked pass. I mean, this was like 3 years ago, but good to see what kind of Willie still, I don't know. He's someone I've always tracked on here. The other interesting things to me was crowd. What do we make of the crowd, Andy?
I'm told that it was a pro Maulers crowd. I suppose based on the audio that was coming through my TV speakers, that would indicate that was the case. I don't know if that means that there's going to be more Maulers fans in support in the Canton market. I don't know what that means, but I mean, it didn't seem like there were nearly as many Stallions fans, or as many fans, period, as there were last year for the championship game. So for me, I mean, the crowd I think it was just Canton fatigue at that point. I mean, you've gone to 12 straight weeks of going to games in that market. That's a lot. I mean, last year, the novelty of having it be the championship game in the playoffs was nice because it was a field that you didn't see very often, except for preseason in the Hall of Fame game. And now all of a sudden here you are, and you're trying to play all throughout the season and trying to encourage your market that you have 2 teams in there and not really getting much support for either. And even though one of them is in the championship game, you still don't really draw that much support from the Pittsburgh market. I mean, it just, the energy, like, I'm sorry, but like I had to go back and watch the highlights for the XFL Championship game, and the energy was just different. It was different for both games. Just a lot more louder, a lot more electric. I know it was the Alamo Dome, so it was obviously encapsulated sound, but they just sounded more, fans are sounded more engaged in the XFL Championship game than they did in the USFL game. And that just stood out to me as far as the TDB product went. If it was in Birmingham, I think it would have been fine. Like, that would have been fine. But as far as the Can market, I think it was just fatigue from overall just having so many weeks straight of football in that stadium.
I think too, all right, it was like raining before, it's supposed to be like
Yeah.
thunderstorms around kickoff, and you have those forecasts. I mean, definitely down. I didn't see any attendance figures being like touted or a lot of, some of the normals, kind of posting about that. I thought it was really beautiful. You had the sunset going. I think it was when the Stallions were driving over the one corner. I thought, man, like this is great. Like they reused a lot of obviously the championship game last year highlights, and I mean anytime the Stars and Stallions played, right, we heard a million times like, did you know these teams played in the championship game last year? But they used that footage a lot. This to me looked beautiful, and I would see that, but it certainly wish that there would have been more crowd. I think people were invested in it though, like you said. It felt like the energy was there. But what was interesting to me was Brock Heward, a friend of the show here, right? And he's been on, and we've been trying to work him coming on this season. And he did the kind of the kickoff, and he took a bunch of weeks off. And I know we've got Mariners and Seahawks kind of here, training camps and kind of everything. But I was under the presumption that he was going to be at the championship game, because he had told me earlier in the season, like, hey, I'm not going to be doing this for, I'm taking some weeks off, but then I'll be back. We'll do the playoffs and championship. He was traveling the week before, couldn't do that. And I mean, they had no sideline reporter, right? They had the woman, like, it was a weird name, like Zoa. It wasn't Zoa, but it was, they had a lady doing like sideline reporting that was just a voiceover that was basically just, they'd show her face, kind of lower bug. But I thought that was odd that for the Fox championship game, I mean, it was on NBC. I watched on Fubo. It was on
NBC. Yeah, that's the thing. Like, it was the NBC broadcasters.
So okay, so then you wouldn't have Brock on. So I didn't know.
Right.
I thought it was weird that you wouldn't have anyone on that. I don't know if it was weird to me then. So I'm answering my own question with why Brock wasn't there, but I don't know why there wasn't an actual sideline reporter there.
Well, I just think that setup overall is just so interesting. The fact that it wasn't on Fox, the company that owns the league itself, it's not on the championship game. I find that to be really interesting, because I wonder if they're trying to do this kind of like dual network showcase like they do with the Super Bowl, right? Where they put it on CBS, or they put it on Fox, or they put it on NBC in a rotation, right? Are they trying to do that too? I don't know I'm not really sure what the get of that was. And look, I like the NBC broadcasters just fine. Jace Garrett's fine. Jack Collinsworth is fine. But I don't know if that's necessarily what you want for your championship game material. No offense. I mean, Kurt Menefee and Joel Klatt, I think, are the guys that you'd want to have in that position, just like last year. Those are your kind of like your A team in a lot of ways. And so I'm just kind of not sure what Fox is trying to get done here in terms of just putting it on NBC. And as we've seen also sometimes with the ratings, somehow NBC ends up drawing better than Fox a lot of the time, which is really the most ironic part. They get more of the viewership that way. So maybe it's trying to get a ratings boost that way. I'm not sure. The whole relationship with NBC is really interesting going forward, because they're going to have to figure out, obviously if it's going to continue afterwards, or what kind of shares that NBC has in this league, if they have any, because again, it's owned by Fox, and what their plan is as far as distributing all these games outside of other networks like FS1 or USA Network, all those kinds of things. I'm not sure if I really understand what NBC's involvement is here, besides getting a ratings boost, because I would think that Fox would try to prioritize having those biggest games on their network again.
Well, or I don't know why, maybe you try to do a simulcast there. I'd have to look back and see what Fox was airing there Saturday night. But yeah, it's weird where you get NBC draws the higher ratings, has the weaker. I don't love Jack, and I know he gets a lot of like, I didn't know Chris Collinsworth was calling this game, but it's a weird, like, it's someone doing a Chris Collinsworth impression. Like, it's a really weird, I don't know. And it seems I'm not sure, like, his voice coming out of his body, like, it's just an octave too high. Like, I don't love it.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I think Jack doesn't have his voice yet, in my opinion. I don't think he knows exactly what his niche is, or what his shtick, or what, like, his entire mantra is supposed to be on a broadcast. Chris is, one of one, and you know who he is. He is very much in his own category. His father has done this for decades and knows what to expect of himself and what to do during a game. Jack is still figuring this out. I still think he was better off as a sideline reporter for NBC, doing his pregame action and leading up into the games on Sunday Night Football. As far as broadcasting goes, I mean, he's still green. He needs more experience. And so I don't think that putting him in that role as the championship game play-by-play is necessarily the best move for Fox and the USFL. I would have preferred to have Menifee and Joel Klatt because I believe that they are most equipped for that overall. They are, again, as I mentioned, they are the A team. They are the ones that have the most experience. Or even Kevin Kugler. Kevin Kugler would have been great too. I mean, he's obviously had a lot of experience as well, done multiple games for Fox. I'm maybe they just weren't available. I don't know what the scheduling was. Like you said, maybe Brock Heward wasn't available and they decided to go switch. Just say, you know what, none of the Fox guys are available. Let's just go to NBC instead. We'll never know. But that to me just seemed an odd fitting for that sort of a game that didn't seem to have almost like it just for some reason at the end of the game when they were all running on and shaking hands, it didn't feel as important as it should have. Does that make sense? It didn't feel like there was as much gravitas between what was happening on the field and what was their presentation. Like there wasn't that immediacy or that kind of like, this is really important that we finished our second season. It just kind of was like, oh yeah, we got through our second season. Awesome. Well, anyways, we'll see you next year. I guess maybe they expect that. But to me, if you're a casual viewer, you want to be given a reason again. Why is this important?
We have some comments here. I'm trying to think. Was it? Oh, James says Fox was airing baseball. Because I was trying to look back. I'm like, what the heck was going on? Mike says, yeah, Fox aired regional MLB, other networks aired reruns. USFL and NBC was lowest rated out of all the networks Saturday night. I was going to say that as well. So prelims have come out, obviously, with the 4th of July and everything. We will probably get final ratings on Wednesday. It was a 1.044 million. So you know, they top of the million, kind of whatever the prelims are going to be, they generally go up. So I would imagine, 1.1, 1.2. I think I had kind of predicted 1.2, 1.3. XFL drew 1.4 back with all of that. The other one was Gregory here was saying I like said because they want to alternate, like at some point they said, like, I guess this was part of the plan to get what caused that plan, we don't know. Andy, did you have a comment on that?
I mean, okay, if it's buy-in, that's great. For me, again, it's just in terms of like the ownership of having that product in your backyard and sort of continuing to promote that product yourself. I get that they're trying to do the rotation of the championship game, like again with the Super Bowl, but who knows? I mean, is NBC going to continue to be involved going forward? We don't know. There's that sort of term limit with them in terms of their buy-in with the broadcast rights. And I don't know how much longer they're going to keep going on after that. And say, for example, if they just think, you know what, this isn't really worth our time. Well, then what is Fox going to do after that? Are they going to just try and put all their games on their network and USA Network and FS1, or do they find another broadcast partner? NBC is so interesting in terms of what their involvement is, because again, they're more niche. They're more niche in terms of what products they put on. They don't have baseball, they don't have basketball, they don't have hockey anymore. They only have NFL football as far as the big ones. They have Premier League, which is getting more popular. They have on Peacock, but they don't really have the MLS deals through Apple TV. So NBC has always been kind of more in terms of like addressing the niche audience as opposed to addressing the wider audience, even though they get better numbers on their network. So I'm not sure what their plan in their sporting department really is going forward. Again, they're handing out contracts left and right to people in the football crew and giving money to everybody else, while ESPN just keeps cutting bait. So that is really the biggest question on my mind, is also the shifting landscape of the sports personalities and where are they all going in these networks, because we're seeing that it's drastically altering just in the past few months alone, where all these people are, some of these people going to Fox because they were cut by ESPN, or going to NBC because they were let go by ESPN and ABC. So it's going to be very interesting to see where all the talent flows to going forward, and what is priority is given to all these leagues and where they want to be presented going forward. So NBC, I'm not going to say they're a linchpin in this whole thing, but they are an important component to this moving forward as far as whose product they're presenting and how they're presenting it.
Yeah, dang here. I was thinking this as well. NBC, there had been a rumor I saw over the weekend too. Yeah, NBC wanting to do Sunday night basketball as well, kind of starting to do that. So maybe try to dip their toes. It's weird with these layoffs, like, and I know it's not all connected, but seeing it was whatever the basketball player just signed like the 5-year, $200 million deal or whatever, like Saturday night, and then we're like laying off these guys, and you're like, there's clearly enough money in this space. I mean, I know it's different forms and how it all flows, but it is hard to have like, Matt Hasselbeck getting let go from ESPN, but yet like Deshaun Watson's getting, and I know it's all different. It's not not all the money is coming from the same pot, but it is interesting there. I had a couple of comments here. Foosball fan, they had flyers for $24 down payment on next year's season tickets. I guess they're committed to season 3. That's interesting because we had Moose on the media day when we were kind of doing our stream talking. I'm like, we're doing the hubs, but we don't really know yet. And they're selling the Canton tickets, but we don't really know yet. Like, what do you make it? And I think we might have a longer discussion this week about, the USFL's future. But while we're on here today, like, it's kind of weird, we're going to figure this out now.
Well, obviously they are baffled by their ratings drop, which a lot of people would take umbrage with you on terms of that wording. But that is something they have to address moving forward. Where are the ratings going to come from, and who is going to indulge in this product? And it's just so weird to have them try to get people to buy into some of these ticket packages when we have no idea where they're going to play next year. Let's be fair. We have no idea who is going to play where and what and when. I know it seems like the Memphis market is there, the Detroit market is there, the Birmingham market is there. The Canton one is just kind of a mystery. We don't know who's going to play there. They could change the names of the teams in the cities tomorrow. They could just say, you know what, we're done with the New Jersey Generals. We're just going to make them the, Nova Scotia Pirates or something. I don't know. They're going to just change their name and their city completely or a country and just say, forget it. We're done with this. I joke, of course, but they really seem to treat these properties as just sort of interchangeable parts. Same thing happened with the Bandits, right? Tampa Bay just got transformed to the Memphis overnight. That was it. End of story. They could do the same thing to the Generals. I don't think they're going to do it to the Maulers now because they just went on a championship run. So I think they're probably just going to have to go all in on Pittsburgh. I think the Generals are your next team that are probably eligible to be changed, which again is so weird because that brand was there in the TSL. It's one of the most recognized brands in the USFL in the old regime. So I don't really see a lot of benefit to changing it, but also I don't know if the New Jersey demographics are engaged in it either. That's the thing. We've talked about that with Mike Mitchell too. Is that market really involved with this team? I couldn't tell you, but it doesn't seem like there's an overwhelming demand from people I've talked to. So it's just weird. I don't really think that there's a lot of answers, and we're not going to get any answers until last minute again, like we did last year. And I don't think we'll know any, not even this calendar year. I think we really literally won't know until we turn into 2024. And that's just going to be another weird offseason of mystery, speculation, and no notes from the league until then.
It's so weird. Like, and we've talked about this a lot on the XFL stuff. And I'm curious what media reception, Danny and DJ and everyone was expecting with the XFL, right? Going into the season and then kind of seeing what they got, right? Like, okay, who's covering us? Okay, what, I saw, Danny was very complimentary to the media kind of at the championship game. Like, I really appreciate you guys kind of being with us all season. It's hard. It was hard for like the New York Guardians to get media coverage in 2020 playing in New York. Like, I think the New Jersey Generals playing in Canton, Ohio, the resonance of that in the greater tri-state, whatever they call like that media market, like I think is like close to zero. And so it is weird to think like you're going to get rid of the most recognizable and Trump and all of that. But I don't know. I don't know who's heard about that. Who's getting their feelings hurt. It's so weird. And I remember having when we had on Ray, what was it? Ray from the AL.com. What was his name? Ray.
Oh my God, I'm forgetting his name. Yeah,
our Birmingham or Roy, whatever his name was. Mm-hmm. And we're talking like Hey, I think the Birmingham Stallions could get like 15 to 17,000 a game, and I think the other teams could probably get 7 to 8, whatever the numbers were, and then the non-Birmingham teams are playing, and it's like 100 fans. I don't think anyone anticipated like not calling the team the X team, right? Like Canton, you could go enjoy these games all the time, but just because one of the teams isn't called the Canton, whatever, like why I don't have any interest now. Like it's so weird to me, but I guess that's human nature. Like I watch Washington Commanders football every Sunday, and I don't live in DC and have never been to a Commanders game live. But I think I am maybe the outlier here, where I think people for whatever reason can't get a connection. That I think that maybe USFL overestimated that or underestimated how big of a deal that was.
I think so too. And just, again, if you have any confidence in what the pageantry or the camaraderie of these leagues or these teams' identities are going to be, then you have to think that you're going to get as much mileage out of that as possible just on the branding alone. Well, we've seen the limit with that. We've seen the limit with how far that can really take you as far as your media exposure, as far as your exposure to other markets. Look, again, I think it just boils down to people who chooses to willingly engage themselves in this product because they actually believe in it. And let's be frank, a lot of people don't, because they see it as another league that's going to go away, or they see it as lesser football, or they see it as some product that's just very either bush league or is mediocre in a lot of ways. And I don't necessarily agree with all of that, but I do think that you have to be able to convince people that this is going to be something that's worth their time and investment in, because otherwise, as I said, maybe just an hour ago, I said it, I think in our group chat, I was like, people are going to sit on their ivory thrones until they're made the fools. And they know that they are going to think that they know better and that this is not going to last, or this is not really worth their time. You have to convince people that's not the case. And that's going to be hard work for all of these leagues, is convincing people that this is a viable product that's worth investing in. And you can't just rest on your laurels and say, well, we're here, so people are going to engage in it. Well, some people are. There's a base level line. But again, are you more concerned with the floor as far as how many people you're going to get, or are you more concerned about the ceiling? Can you get more people involved, and how many more people can you get involved in this? Otherwise, I mean, you're going to have the same results as you did, and maybe even slightly declining numbers like the USFL did this past season if you just continue to have the status quo.
Well, that's the thing is, and we have a couple of comments here about the Moose being baffled and kind of all that stuff. Yeah, Greg said it's Roy S. Johnson. I put that up, but yeah, Roy S. Johnson. I was like, I've had a lot of guests on the show in the last 3 years. I appreciate Roy. But I like if you're, I thought when Greg Parks was on, we did our post XFL championship game, the recap, the kind of the TV ratings and all of that. And Greg had all the numbers. I thought it was really interesting. And this is not, trying to be a homer or whatever. If you're the XFL next year, I think there's very easy, like these are really easy things that we can do, pay more to market, right? Better TV slots, better TV windows, more consistent. Like these are things that we can do. If you're the USFL right now, save for, okay, we're going to add a hub. It's like we were Saturday and Sunday every year. We had 26 network broadcast games. We had more consistent time slots. We really marketed. We ran a lot of ads. We tried to be more invested in the communities. And we had guys in Birmingham doing stuff, and Memphis doing stuff, and Michigan, like, besides, and that's what they always say. Okay, what they're going to add, add a city, whatever. Like, but just having better time slots this year. 8 with the XFL on network TV compared to 26 with the USFL. Pretty equal ratings, and that shouldn't be the case. If you're on a third of the broadcast windows on network TV that the XFL was in the USFL, you should not have equal ratings. And I think the USFL massively underperformed this year. Like you said, we had the comment, the Moose baffling. Mike here says, if Moose was miffed by the XFL beating the USFL in ratings for the regular season, he's really going to be miffed when he sees USFL Championship lost to the XFL Championship. I mean, I think that it's not surprising to me, and that's what I posted on Friday. Anybody that's listened or read anything that you and Evan and Pat and Mike Mitchell and Sam and Matt Lyons and everyone said, like, you should not be surprised that USFL TV ratings are down this year. But what do you make, Andy?
I mean, again, I think part of it is fatigue, right? People that have just said, you know what, I'm good on football for a while. I'm not going to engage in this until the actual season starts, the NFL season starts, I should say. So that's part of it. And the other part of it is last year, I mean, the USFL was the only game in town, right? That was it. And same with the XFL in 2020. That was the only game in town. Same with the AAF in 2019. You know, I have to keep bringing that up. It's like that's something that was standing alone by itself. Yeah, rest in peace, right? But I think that's part of that's the whole part of this thing, right? This is uncharted territory. This is uncharted waters. There was no dual leagues. It's really been interesting for me kind of doing this like Scott Hansen thing where like NFL Network Red Zone channel thing where I'm watching multiple games at the same time of multiple leagues. I'm watching a CFL game and a USFL game at the same time. Like that is unfathomable just not too long ago. And yet it seems this is where we're headed as far as just having oodles of content for people to dive into. But at some point you're going to have a threshold of people who are just checked out and saying I'm good. I don't need any more of this. I'm going to wait until I need a break. I need to have summer off. I need to have this season off. I can't keep doing this. And so, I mean, that's the nature of the beast, and that's going to happen. And again, can you give people a reason to indulge in that product? And can you give them a viable way to invest in it? Because otherwise, it's just going to be the same thing over and over again, and it's going to be monotonous for a lot of people. So for the ratings, I mean, yeah, Fox did all they could. They put it all in the network games. They promoted. They had a Super Bowl ad. They did as much as they could to try and promote it, and it didn't seem to work in terms of the TV ratings. Maybe in terms of having a few more people show up, obviously being in home markets helped that. But even then, there's just so much more work to be done and trying to get people to buy in. But it can't just be based on nostalgia, and it can't just be based on, well, this worked last year and this worked in the past. It should work again. The market's changed. And after going through the pandemic like we did, it's clearly changed a lot. And that needs to be taken into account.
Say what you want about these leagues and, CFL or kind of how they interact with their fan base. You have the XFL here, from the beginning. And I remember the first interview Danny did with, God, who was it? It was right when they bought the league. And she goes, I want to make this league be accessible to everybody. I want women to be able to do this. A lot of females that watch sports, it's only because my dad watched it or my husband or whatever. Like, I want people to be able to buy in, right? You have The Rock and it's Player 54, and I know that gets old, and we're kind of doing this thing, and this is our league, and this is our, all the promo, everything. This is ours, and we're kind of in this and whatever. USFL all through this season. Real football comes back. We're real football. Every week I get the emails, real football for real fans, real pros. Every week I would get the email previewing the games and coming up, and you have all this stuff. And I've said before, it's the BDE, like we're Fox and like we don't need anybody. And then you come out and you're like, well, we can't figure out why our ratings are down. It's like, because I think you're pretty standoffish all year, and you're like, we don't need anybody, and God, dang it, this is kind of what we're doing in this. Like, well, we can't figure out why no one wants to watch our sport, why no one wants to watch the game. It's like, maybe because you've been really standoffish and you have alienated anybody that maybe wasn't only an XFL fan. I was like, oh, I'll go check this out. Well, real football for real fans. Well, I was watching. So what does that make me? Like, am I an idiot? Am I a dummy? Like, it's a weird energy and I know it's marketing ploy and I know it's kind of all that stuff, but it's this weird energy to roll that all year. And then that Moose come out like, well, I just can't figure out. I know. So I don't know. I was very entertained by that headline on Friday. Not because I want the USFL to fail, but I want there to be some sense of humility there. And I think that the XFL went through a learning process this year. We're coming in, our expectations are here, and maybe it's a little bit more here that we're going to build up. And I think the USFL right now is like, we don't know. What are we going to do? I mean, what do we do? What's our next ploy? Do we rebrand? We had a comment here from Mike, saying, you rebrand another team, you get rid of Tampa. And now, okay, we get rid of it. We get rid of the general. Like, I don't think, Moose said on there, we're not expanding until we have 8 teams in 8 markets. So what does that mean? It means you got to rebrand or bust. I mean, there's no, I don't know what their next step is.
Well, I mean, how quickly do they expect to do that? And do people have patience for that? Does Fox, the network, have patience for that? I know they own the league and it's up to them, but at some point you have to be able to make sound financial decisions, and you have to say to yourself, is this going to really work in the long run? And are we going to be able to get it out into all these markets? Is this viable? At some point you have to put your money where your mouth is, and you have to be able to do it. And just, again, expecting people to show up because there's football going on doesn't always work as a product. It's not, it clearly hasn't been the case in some of these markets where it just another team that's not from that place, that home market, doesn't really draw the same amount of attention. And why would they? I would be kind of confused, like if two NFL, I know it's a bigger product, but like if two random NFL or MLB teams were playing in one of my stadiums in my town, I'd be like, that's cool. Why? I like, it would be a little strange to me unless there's like a championship game or something of that matter, which again, didn't even seem to matter for the Canton market that much for the playoffs. So again, you have to get buy-in. You have to get regional buy-in from these markets. Work with that first, and then you can start to work on, all right, let's care about other teams. Let's care about other entities in the market, and then you can start moving it out and pushing it forward. But until then, like you have to be able to buy in, and Fox just hasn't done that yet, or I don't know what the hang up is as far as getting all these teams out to their markets. Or I know they're doing a slow build, and I know that's their mantra and all that, but how much longer or how much more time can you afford to that? And also, how many more markets are you going to move until that actually comes to fruition? And also, if you get to a market and it doesn't go up to standard, or if you don't like the crowd, are you just going to move it? Like, what if at some point you just say, you know what, actually, we don't like the Detroit market. There's not enough people. We're just going to move you. Then what does that tell your fans? Like at some point, if you're going to keep doing that over and over again, I get that sometimes movement is necessary, but there's only so many times before people will actually want to sustain themselves or be able to buy into it. Otherwise, they're just going to see it as a rug pull.
Well, I thought Memphis was a great example of that. I thought Memphis grew over the season, and I thought they did a really good job there. And I heard that they were doing a lot more work in the area there. And I know having, one of the hubs here and stuff like that, to me, Memphis was the success story of the year. I know that Michigan didn't have as much success at home, and, the Showboats were a little bit sexier of a team with being kind of the new franchise. But I mean, that to me proved we can build here. I don't know if that stadium is the best, but I don't know if they have any other options there. But, you position it the right way and you kind of tarp it. Like, I thought that looked good. And I thought Memphis was one of the, not few, but one of the good kind of success stories of the year. I think Detroit needs to work on that. But I think then you deal with the same stuff spring leagues did. I mean, I read the Bill Shays of the world and everyone going to the Detroit games like, this isn't the NFL. Like, it's like, yeah, no kidding. It's not, it's not, but, it's something to cover this time of year. And I don't know. I'm seeing these layoffs across the media, and Bill Shea got laid off from the Athletic this year. I'm like, I would be happy to have kind of any sports to cover at this point if people are gonna, and I don't want ill will of anyone. And Bill Shea is a friend of the show, but like, you get that mentality, people hating on us or us having critical opinions. Like, we are bought in at this point. Like, we are invested in wanting this. You get these fly-by-nighters coming in and like the Mike Florios of the world that don't, I've emailed and corresponded with Mike probably half a dozen times trying to get him to come on the show. Right. And like, he's nice and he writes me back, and we've had Discord about it. And it's like, you only want to cover this when the ratings are down. And you want to post your article and you want to move on. There's no investment here besides, I'll get a few thousand clicks here because the XFL ratings were down, or the XFL lost 60 million, or the USFL ratings are down, or whatever. Like, that's my problem is, we are not the issue here. It's the people that kind of fly in, poo on it, and then move on. They had that, was it the Anthony, the guy he's one of the guys with the Sports Business Journal or whatever as well, where he was poo-pooing on that as well. And I'm like, I don't like this, that you come in and kind of, what the heck was his name? I'll figure it out. Anyway, Andy, any thoughts?
I mean, that's the thing. It's always going to be a fly-by-night situation with these smaller leagues and entities because they don't cover it day by day. And then when there's something that's controversial, you want clicks and you want exposure and notoriety on your channel. So you're going to cover it for that day. And that's going to be it. And you're going to be out of there in a moment just covering the negative points. That's kind of how news cycles work. It's not just sports. That's how it works in news too, where say, oh, well, look at this tragedy over here. It's like, well, what's going on with this community? We never covered this before. What's the story behind this? And no one really, wants to put in the work or the effort to actually do that because that would require work and effort. So for me, I think it's a really big deal with the football leagues. I mean, it was the same thing with the National Arena League and the whole Albany Empire debacle with Antonio Brown owning the team. And that, that story blew up on so many different channels. Pat McAfee talks about it. All these like different, Twitter accounts are talking about it. It was just so funny to me and watching our colleague Sam just kind of put out fires. Like Sam is in this every single day and has been, first of all, talking about the story the entire time. So if you've been following him, you would have known the lead up to this entire situation.
Yeah, there's no surprise if you're following.
Right.
Yeah,
right. We're like, yeah, we knew this was going to happen, but like to everyone else, it was shocking. And then, secondly, it was the league itself and where it's going and what they're planning to do moving forward with all the Arena Football League and all this. And so it was just kind of funny, but like that's an example, right? That's just one thing being picked up because it's so shocking and it's got this one figure that everyone knows that it's gonna get picked up and be passed around. But all those people are going to go away and not actually care about the National Arena League because that's not their beat. So it goes across for all leagues that don't have regular viewership or regular fans involved, or at least the number of fans that you need in order to have that constant exposure. We try our best, obviously, us in our group tried as best to get that information out about all these leagues, but there's people like that. They're just gonna be touch and go. They're gonna be here for a minute and then they're out until the next big thing happens.
We'll start winding up here pretty soon. I got nothing to do today. Dorothy's out at the lake. I have a wedding tomorrow, but I'm sure Andy wants to go do other things today on his vacation. But good viewership here. Appreciate it. If anyone else has any questions, we'll probably start wrapping this up here and get out. Hope Pat makes it home safe. Like I said, I know he was having connection issues. I appreciate him and kind of worked out here and Andy being able to have time. And otherwise, I'd probably be sitting here talking to myself for an hour. So I appreciate that. Andy making the time. And like I said, I know Pat doing his best here, trying to get back from his crazy work schedule. I know that Pat's kind of had as well recently. I will say, if you want football tonight, 4:00 Pacific, 7 Eastern, free for anybody. Because I wanted to check and see here when the game's on. But CFL Plus tonight, if you go to CFL.com/ or CFL.ca/plus, I just Google CFL and the plus sign. But BC at the Argos tonight. I think it's going to be a really exciting game. BC really hot right now, Vernon and all of that. So that's my little plug. If you want football today, if you have nothing going on, if you're holiday in or, if you're here in the States, and it's kind of weird. Like some people are working today. I think we have good viewership right now. I think some people just have the day off, but today at 4 Pacific, I think that's going to be a good one. So it's completely free. They don't even show ads on there because I don't think they have the rights on that. So just Google CFL Plus, but it's going to be on today. Argos, BC Lions at Argos, going to be exciting there. If anyone else has any questions, Andy, anything else from you? Because we could talk all day. We figure out something for this week with what we want to do for the show, but I just don't want to belabor anything today.
Yeah, just two things, actually on two different leagues. So first of all, I agree with you. Tonight's matchup for the CFL is going to be great. I love that Argos BC. Just first of all, the color scheme, that orange and blue, the Cambridge blue and the bright orange. I love that contrast. Potential Grey Cup preview, depending on what happens. I love the idea of Vernon Adams Jr. going against Chad Kelly, two really outstanding quarterbacks for two leagues. I think you and Mike need to start getting some like rolling bets going on during the season because you guys are going to match up multiple times. And I think you need to continue this trend of like, jabbing at each other during the season. But this is really wonderful to see this matchup early on, an undefeated matchup. BC's defense is awesome. They're playing on the road third time out of 4 games. So I wonder if at some point does fatigue set in with them being on the road so much, or are they just going to continue rolling like they were in Winnipeg? For the Argonauts, I think it's weird that they are are not favored at home. I find that really intriguing. Again, I think getting the +3 at home is really interesting because they were not favored against Hamilton and they actually shellacked them. And so that trend continues. But I think this is a great matchup, maybe one of the best early season matchups of the season. I look forward to you and Jason talking about it on the channel again. You guys have been doing a great job talking about CFL content every week with that. So I'm looking forward to that game tonight. My last thing before I go is
I lied. Yeah, it's not. Dang it! It's not. Someone just Cole posted. It's because it's not. So if you're out of the U.S., if you're in the U.S., it's got to be on here. It's on CBS Sports Network. So I completely lie because I'm like, oh, it's showing here. Then of course, like once I click the link, if you're in the U.S., get on your YouTube or your Fubo. It's going to be on CBS Sports Network. Man, I totally botched that one.
Okay, well that's good because then it records for me, so that's better. That's much better. But yeah, so CFL content's gonna be great. I mean, that's the thing. It's that there's no off season for us. It continues here. But as far as the USFL goes, my last point is just be more accepting, or if you're gonna rebrand, just be more real with yourselves and really understand that there are other people that need to be involved too. Don't treat yourselves as some like special entity that is separate from the rest of the ecosystem and doesn't deserve to have other people involved because they don't get it. That's not the right messaging. I didn't like that messaging from day one about real football, real fans. I think it's conceited, and I think it's completely out of line with what the ethos of people's attitudes towards spring football and alt football is. I think it's ridiculous. They need to get out of that mindset and they need to move away from that branding because I think it really hurt them this season. They need to really look at themselves in the mirror and be realistic about their expectations next year until they start making some tangible changes with their markets, their team branding, and where they're going as far as their talent accumulation, as far as to competing with the XFL and the CFL for players. Like, you need to be able to account for that. This is a different ball game. There's people involved here. You need to step up your game, or else who knows? If we're coming up on year 3, it's again another big year for them, and to see where Fox goes with it going forward. But I want to see some tangible changes because quite frankly, it just felt like more of the same this year, and they need to really step it up next year.
Gregory here has a football question before we get out of here. He wants you to rate the following Stallions players: Jay Sternberger, Davion Davis, Deion Kane, Michael Pedway. Deion Kane, based on the title game, was insane. I mean, that was the one catch he had, and there was like 3 Maulers guys draped on him there, and he threw that down. Any thoughts on this? Gregory wants to talk real football before we get out of here.
Well, Kane was outstanding as far as the special teams player, as far as a wide receiver goes. I think he was an excellent signing before the season. I loved him being added to this team, and quite frankly, is very crucial considering the people that they lost along the way. Michael Petaway was great too. I think their receiving core, Jay Sternberger. I mean, I always thought he was going to stick in the NFL, and he just never did. He just could not get the consistency that he needed to have, especially when he got drafted by Green Bay. I think he's kind of still in that Sal Cannella role where it's like, you're a good target, you're big, you have decent hands, but I'm not sure if you're going to be able to elevate yourself up to the next level. He may just be a spring football lifer for the rest of his career, but he's good. I think he fits well in this Birmingham offense, but as far as all the people on that list goes, I'd say Deion Kane is probably the most important as far as game breaking. He's going to offer you speed. He's going to offer you versatility in his routes. I think he's somebody that you want to keep around if you can, but who knows? He might get another call from an NFL team. But that receiving core is pretty good overall. Again, considering all the injuries they had and the people they lost, I think Birmingham has to be pretty pleased with what they did, especially collecting this personnel.
Well, and I think didn't Deion have 3 touchdowns in the game? Like, he had that one. It was like the one corner grab, and they went back to review it. It was funny because he gave the ball off to the fan in the stands. I'm like, this is gonna be pretty embarrassing in this game. It's like we went and saw years ago. I don't know if you know the band Sugar Cult. They had Stuck in America and I'm Bouncing Off the Walls Again. They were in the Van Wilder movie. They had their song in there, but they were a punk band. And they got it hit. They hit, and they were playing at the Showbox here in Seattle. And they play their thing, whatever. They do their little set, and they throw off all their drumsticks and everything, and they walk off the stage, and we're all chanting encore, encore, encore. And they come back out and they go, so we've never actually done an encore before. We've never headlined our own show. So we're going to need you guys to throw back those drumsticks so we can keep playing. And so then my buddy Nate ended up catching it. Then they threw him out again, and he caught it the second time, to end the show. And that would have been like Deion Kane handing the football back and being like, I actually know that play guy. I thought that was fun. I go, that's pretty ballsy. You better be pretty sure you got that in inbounds there to hand that ball off to the stands.
Yeah. No, I mean, you might want to tag a receipt to that football next time you hand it out.
That was like when Brady handed off, or someone handed, was it Brady's 500? Someone handed off, and then they had to get it from the fans in the stand.
No, it was they tried to auction off. It was like they also had an auction where it was like, the handoff. Well, it was the handoff, but also like they had, I think, his last touchdown pass, or his last in that playoff game against the Rams. They thought it was going to be his last touchdown pass ever, and someone was trying to auction it off, and then the value, obviously, after it was sold, it was decreased significantly because he ended up renouncing he was coming back. So that was a whole ordeal.
Yeah, he needed to get in on that sand market when they were auctioning off the sand from the beach where he retired. That would have been the move.
Oh my God. Yeah, until that doesn't work either.
Well, here we go. I appreciate it. Like I said, Jason and I will be back tomorrow, same time, 9 a.m. We'll be doing our CFL recap. Big game tonight. We'll figure out this week. It's just weird because of the 4th and the holidays and all that. I have weddings Saturday, Sunday, or Friday, Saturday. So we will kind of figure out what the show looks like on Friday. But appreciate everyone. Appreciate Andy. I hope Pat makes it home safe. Thank you guys. Like I said, like and subscribe here. And where is my stuff here? We'll get out of here. Thanks so much.